Hello, Energy Campers. My name is Jamie, and I'm with Southern Energy Management, and we are excited to tell you guys a little bit about what our company does and how it relates to energy efficiency and renewable energy. And a little bit about us. In 2001, our company was established, and our mission is to improve the way people make and use energy. And our focus on that is that we approach energy in the built environment. So we look at making clean energy using solar power, and we install solar, and then we focus on our buildings and commercial buildings, which is where you go shopping, your houses and apartments and condominiums. Everywhere we live, work, and play, we are focused on the buildings that we are involved in, making them more energy efficient. So we are building scientists and solar power technicians and installers. And we are also what's called a certified B Corp. So one of the things that's really powerful about business is that you can also be a force for good. And so our business not only is focused on changing the way people make and use energy, but we also hold ourselves to a really high standard of how do we work together, how do we treat each other, and our impact on our environment and our community. So going a little bit deeper into what is energy efficiency, one of the phrases that we like to use at Southern Energy is you can't manage what you don't measure. We like to approach energy efficiency services, which are this energy efficiency that happens inside of a building before you live in it or before you work in it, is very scientific. So we approach it as building scientists with the goal of making sure that houses and buildings go together and are not wasteful. The reason we do this is that when it comes to energy and the environment and climate change, we found in North Carolina, 72% of the energy that we use actually occurs inside of buildings, even more so when we're home all the time. And at least 30% of that energy use is happening inside our homes. So that is one reason why, as a company, we chose to focus on reducing energy use and energy wastefulness inside of our buildings. And if we go a little bit farther, a good question to ask is, well, how much energy, where does energy use come from? What can I do about it? So on this chart, you can see that typically inside of a home where you live every day or inside of an apartment, you can see that most of the energy we use is to keep ourselves warm or to keep ourselves cool with the air conditioning during the summer. And then the next portion, the other half of our energy use is either coming from, say, our appliances and refrigerator, from hot water that we use, and also from things we plug into the wall. So our gaming systems, our computers, and our phones, all of that is pulling energy out of the house. And we really want to look at what can we do to make sure that we're not wasting energy. So our company, we, on the building energy services side, we are called home energy raters, which are basically inspectors that are focused on the inside of the building before you move in, and how do we make it so that those other systems don't have to work so hard. There are strategies that, it turns out, the way you build a house can actually be better so that you're not wasting energy. We're going to go into this a little bit more, but when you talk about how is a building put together, these items that are listed here on this slide are the basic skeleton and muscles of a building. So underneath the skin of a building, you're going to have your walls, your ceiling and your roof, your windows, and then all the systems that go inside of it, kind of like in your body where blood travels around. You've got different systems inside of a building that are bringing air all kinds of places and making sure water can get all kinds of places, as well as lighting. And if we don't pay attention to the way these systems are put in, they don't work very well and they can be very inefficient. Sort of a lot like your body, and if you eat a lot of junk food and then you're really tired and you feel really bad, if we don't treat the systems in a building like they all work together, we find that they use a lot more energy than they have to. And so in this next slide, Grant is going to talk to you a little bit about the specifics of what it really looks like with buildings under construction. Grant, would you like to jump in?
Hey everybody, this is Grant here. I work on the multifamily and commercial energy services. We work with builder energy services, but on larger buildings with apartments, and as Jamie mentioned, condominiums, and really anywhere and everywhere we work, live, and play. So here's some examples of just different types of projects that we work on here at Southern Energy. There's nothing too big or too small that we can't work on the energy efficiency side. And so moving to the next slide. So energy efficiency really starts early. And Southern Energy Management gets involved once somebody decides that they want to build a house or an apartment building where people can live. And so we look at the drawings and the plans, also known as the blueprints, to just make sure that everything is looking really, that it's designed correctly, because when we live in these apartments and houses, we want to make sure that everything, all the systems that Jamie was just, we're just talking about, all the systems work correctly and that they're in the right place. And so we really do a lot of plan review on the beginning, and as the project's built, you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, once it goes into framing, we walk around, we want to make sure that the framing is being built correctly to make sure that we limit outside air from getting into our conditioned areas where we're living. But also in the middle picture, we're looking at insulation and air sealing. We want to make sure that the framing's good. We want to make sure that the insulation and air sealing is put correctly, because that's going to help the outside air from coming inside. If you've ever been in an older house or building and you felt on a cold winter night air kind of blowing in maybe on the floor area, that's probably because when it was built way back in the day, they didn't focus on this. But with science and a lot of new technology, we've been able to identify these areas where we can put extra air sealing, extra insulation to make sure that we can go inside these houses and apartments and make sure that we're comfortable. And if we don't do this, then we're also going to be wasting a lot of energy trying to heat and cool our houses and apartments. And so this is a very important stage. And then on the far right, you can see that these buildings, we progress with the buildings as they're built. And once the roofs go on and the windows are installed and everything, they start, once we give it, they start hanging the drywall, and then they move to the cabinets and the countertops, and then they put refrigerators and other appliances in. And then you get to move in with your couch and your TV and your video games. Moving to the next slide. So after we've been in these buildings and we helped the builders from the framing to the insulation, air sealing, all the way through construction, right before we move into these houses and apartments, we need to do performance testing. And when we say performance testing, what we're really doing is air testing. So on the right, you can see a picture of one of our team members setting up what's called the blower door. And the blower door has a fan on it that we basically can take all of the air from inside and we can blow it outside. And we have a little device called a manometer, which is a little computer that is going to measure how much air leaking inside the building. And so we can measure that. And that is really important because we want to make sure that these houses pretty airtight. We want to keep the outdoor air from coming inside, because again, if that outside air is coming inside, that's going to make us uncomfortable. In the summer, it's going to make us really hot and humid. In the winter, it's going to make us really cold, and it's going to take all of our nice heated air and just suck it outside. So we want to make sure that we eliminate that, and we measure that leakage with the blower door. Also, looking on the bottom right, we want to make sure that our heating and cooling systems are also airtight, because air can leak from those systems outside. And again, it's really important for us as humans. We like to be cool in the summer and warm in the winter. And so we need to make sure that all of this air that we're heating or cooling is getting to the right place, and we don't want it to leak outside. Because if we had a leak in it and we had it in the attic, let's say down, North Carolina, it's really hot in the summer, all of that nice cold air that we want on our face and everything to make us cool is going to be leaking into the attic. So we want to make sure that we help the builders and everybody that's installing this to make sure it's airtight and air sealed. And so we do what's called a duct blaster test. Just like the blower door, we want to make sure that the heating and cooling system is not leaking our nice conditioned air outside. If you want to go to the next slide. Alrighty, so data collection. Everybody likes numbers, right? Well, some people people do. But I will say it's very, very important throughout this whole process that we help builders and homeowners do data collection. So we take lots of pictures and we make lots of notes because it's very, very good organized through the whole process, because at the end we have all of this data. We saw the insulation, the air sealing, we did our blower door test, we did the duct leakage test to make sure that all the outside air is not getting inside. But then what do we do with all that data? Well, we do what's called an energy model, because we want to make sure that this house is performing as it was designed and intended, because you wouldn't want to go buy a house that's going to be very inefficient, especially if you planned on it being efficient. So we take all of these numbers and all of these pictures and everything, and we put it into a software on the computer, and it spits out a score. And this score was called a HERS score. The lower, the better. And so we want to help these builders and apartment owners and everybody living in these buildings to get the lowest HERS scores possible, because that means it's going to be the most comfortable and the most energy efficient. And I think, Jamie, I'm going to pass it back on to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Grant. So as Grant was talking about all that measurement and all that data collection in order for your house to get a good grade, how does that really translate to the real world? So you're going to be more comfortable and you're going to waste less energy. But really what we see is that you get to hold on to some money. And this is really where it can be impactful on a day-to-day basis and in your life, is that all of that money that you would have been spending to heat and cool your home, you now get to save and put towards other things that you like in life or have some fun with. And so we take that information as well, and we help roll that out, because while that really translates is the energy savings, you can sort of see on this report that we've created for a community here in Chapel Hill, is that they're also able to help protect the environment. The less energy you waste, the less carbon footprint, carbon emissions we put into the air. But also, all that translates into a better built home and more things that you can do. For example, with the money these homeowners save and renters save every year, they're able to have 68 more hamburgers, and that's way better than paying an energy bill, and more things that make you happy in life, right? When we go to our next slide. And so at Southern Energy Management, once we've really focused on the buildings, the other half of our business where we really feel a super cool way to pull things together is now you have a building that's working really well together, it's energy efficient, the people that live in the building are educated and they're cutting their lights off and know where their energy's going and unplugging things at night, so everybody's working together. Now we can put solar energy on top of these buildings, and it doesn't take as much solar energy to power them. This is super powerful because it makes solar energy accessible to a lot of folks. And what our goal is that we see any building that has sun shining on it can have solar energy and gets to, the energy we do use is coming and is clean from the sun. So you can see in the next slide, what we call this is total cost of ownership. What's really cool about this, and what Mike's going to get ready to talk to you about when we get into the technical side of what actually is solar energy, is that it actually works so well directly with buildings. And someday, when you're paying your bills and you're in your own place, hopefully this will be the norm, and you'll be able to save money and have power that's coming from a clean source, all working together. And it costs you less to have solar than to not have it. So Mike, would you talk to these folks about some solar power?
Absolutely. Hey, I'm Mike. I'm on the solar team here. I'm an educator for the company. So my role is answer questions for any homeowners, business owners who want to learn about solar from the very beginning. So I pull up the satellite imagery and give them as much feedback as I can and answer a bunch of questions and see how we can help them. So we're going to get started on the first slide here with how does solar actually work. So when sunshine hits solar panels, direct current electricity is created. However, we use, inside of our homes, we use alternating current electricity. So there's a device called an inverter that switches that power over. And so once that power is switched over to AC power, you can use it. Anything you plugged in is running on. So your PlayStation, your cell phone that's charging, literally anything, everything in your home, air conditioner, everything is running on. And then at some point during most days, your solar panels are producing more power than you're using inside the house. And so when that happens, all the extra energy you generate goes straight back to Duke Energy, and they give you a credit on your bill. This is some examples of some of the different ways we can do home solar. So if you look on the picture on the left, I really like this one because it gives a good idea of what solar panels used to look like just a few years ago there on the bottom. And in the top picture, you can see what they look like now. It's just a big glass rectangle, kind of looks like a bunch of skylights lined up on the roof. So big difference. And those two neighbors are two of our clients. Then on the right is what we call ground mount solar. So typically with ground mount solar, the roof is either too shaded or too complex or facing the wrong direction. So we really just can't generate much electricity using it. But hopefully that property has some space in the yard we can use. And there's different ways we can do that. On the bottom right is a single pole mount for if we have a very small amount of space and we're trying to keep the ground open. And then on the left is a sort of a low ground mount like you might see in a solar farm. And then the top there is a structure called a pergola. You may have missed the solar panels, but on top of that small structure next to the pool, that roof is actually solar panels. So it's creating electricity to use inside the house while also creating a nice shady area there near the pool and keeping that area cool. We also do commercial solar. So as Jamie mentioned earlier, for businesses, shops, any of the other places we go, buildings that we're in that we don't live in typically, and then some that we do live in. Here on the left is an example of one that we would live in. That's a Revision, which is a building in downtown Raleigh. That's an executive apartment building. And we have a solar array there on the top. It's kind of an interesting one because you can see the panels are facing two different directions. We have some facing east and some facing west at a very shallow pitch there. And then on the top right is, I believe that's White Memorial Presbyterian, and also in Raleigh. Another roof where we had to use multiple surfaces. The roof that's facing the camera is south. So the picture is actually looking north. So we have south, west, and east roofs being used on that one. And the one on the bottom there is a movie theater in Wilmington, where again, the panels are really shallow to the roof. That's a flat roof. So you can see there's all kinds of different roof surfaces that we work with as well. And then in North Carolina, you're also going to see what's called utility scale solar. Anytime you drive to the beach, sometimes to the mountains as well, when on the side of the highway, if you look long enough, you will see a solar farm. And it's just basically a big hills and fields covered with solar panels, kind of like what you see here in the photos. And because we have so many of these solar farms in North Carolina is the #2 solar state in all of the US. That's something to be very proud of. Only California generates more power than us using solar panels. So that's a big deal. However, California requires all new buildings to install solar panels. New homes and buildings have to have solar panels on the roof now. It's not something we require here, so we got a little ways to go to keep up with them. When we're looking at, well, again, when a new homeowner calls in, wants info on solar, that's my job, is to pull up the satellite imagery and give them the feedback. And this is really what I'm looking for. So primarily, again, limited shade. We don't want a lot of trees or other buildings that are going to cast shade on the roof. Plenty of roof space. These two pictures here are a really good example of that. The one on the bottom left has significantly less roof space than the one on the right because of the complicated roofs. There's multiple levels there. Those create shadows we have to deal with and limit the amount of square feet that we have to install the panels. So we can't physically install as many panels. But the one on the top right is just ideal. Wide open, facing south, no trees around, just one big open. So yeah, we want it to face south. That's always going to be the best. And then the solar-friendly electric utility is very, very, very important. There's a lot of electric utilities in North Carolina, about 30 or so, and they all have very different policies for solar. They're all very different from each other. So then after we do that initial analysis using satellite imagery, one of the designers goes on site with a tool called a SunEye. And these really weird looking pictures here are what's taken using that SunEye. So the picture on the left is actually an upside down image of the sky above the roof where the solar panels are going to be installed. So what you're looking at is from left to right there on that grid is times of day, and then from the bottom to the top is months of the year. So you're seeing every hour of the year covered in that yellow band. And then the green that you see coming down from the top is actually the tops of the trees and where the shadow is going to come through those trees and affect the solar production. So not only can we identify which trees are going to be a problem, which branches are going to be a problem, we can actually quantify precisely how much of a problem they're going to be and how much they're going to limit the kilowatt hour production of the solar array. We can go on to the next one. And then here is after we get the system installed, we install what's called a solar and consumption monitoring. So you can see not only what your solar system is producing, but how you're using that power inside the house. So on the left side here is a survey And the x-axis across the bottom is showing you starting at 4 a.m. and then going on into the evening, so you can see each hour of the day when the power is being used. The y-axis going up is showing you how much power, how many kilowatt hours are actually being used in the house. So as the day starts, you can see there's not much electricity being used while everyone's asleep at 4 a.m., just that little bit of red down there. And then as people start waking up a little before 8 a.m., you can see how home is using more electricity. But it's also the same time when the sun is coming up. So the blue area is the electricity that's being used in the home that's being powered by the solar panels. So you're not buying that electricity from Duke, you're saving money right there. And then the green is anything extra that the solar panels are producing that's not needed in the house. And remember, that power goes straight back to the utility and you get a credit onto your bill. So the left side is a single day to show you a good example of when the power is being used and how much you're sending back. And then on the right side is an entire week. So you can kind of see how each day is a little different. And this one's a decent example because on the first day that you see there, the green is less than the rest. You can see probably the first half of that day, there were some clouds or rain or something that limited the solar production. So they weren't sending as much back and weren't producing as much or sending as much back on that one day. But the rest of the week looks pretty good, pretty similar. Then you get to that last day and that looks like it was just a thunderstorm all day long because there's no green and not very much blue. So we talked a little bit about, Jamie got into, which types of buildings, and what types of devices use power and where that goes to transportation or buildings and things like that. But it's also important to take a look back and see where that electricity actually comes from, how it's being generated. And in North Carolina, it's really important to be aware where that happens. So here in North Carolina, this data was updated yesterday. So this is as of July 8th, 2020. Nuclear is where we get most of our electricity in North Carolina, just over 35%. And then right behind that is natural gas and coal. And those two are pretty even, they're pretty close. When I looked at this about a year and a half ago, natural gas was actually in first at about 33%, and nuclear was down below that. So it does change over time. The best news of the change is that in the 7 or 8 years I've been studying this data, renewable energy numbers have gone up and coal has come down. Coal has come down a lot. It used to be coal was by far the highest percentage of our energy portfolio in North Carolina, but now it's a little bit more balanced, and when the state has goals to go even higher with that renewable energy number. But yeah, just important to know that if you're buying electricity from an electric utility, it's dirty. It's burning fossil fuels. It's creating pollution. There's just no way around it. And then some people want to take solar a step farther. If you have solar panels on your house during a grid outage, the solar panels will not power your home unless you have a battery. And we have new battery technology that's very reliable and very good now, which is different. We didn't have that really just 5 years ago. So this diagram you see is very similar to the first one we looked at how solar works. But after the solar power comes through the inverter, goes into the house, instead of going straight out to the grid with any extra power you have, it goes to the battery first. So they're always going to keep that battery charged so that after a hurricane or an ice storm, if Duke's grid gets knocked out, the home can run off of that battery until the grid comes back on. And even bigger advantage is if there's sunshiny weather, the solar panels will keep recharging that battery. So if we have an extended outage of a few days after a hurricane, typically there's some sunshine after a hurricane. So you're able to keep that battery charged and have power in the home until Duke's able to get back and get the grid restored. And so what typically people do for backup power historically is buy a gas generator, which is a good solution in a lot of ways to have power if the grid goes out. But there's some really, really major advantages to solar plus a battery versus a gas generator. Starting with the fumes. We mentioned that earlier. A gas generator is you're going to generate some fumes that are not going to be fun to breathe. That's not something you have to deal with solar power and batteries. And the solar panels are going to save you money on the monthly electric bill, whereas the gas generator only operates during an emergency. So there's really no financial savings. There's no monthly savings for a generator, only with the solar. No maintenance with solar and batteries. With a gas generator, you do have to have periodic maintenance to make sure it's going to operate when you need it. So solar and batteries is silent. That's not the case with gas generators. They can be very noisy. I've even met someone who installed one and then now he can't sleep. It's too close to his bedroom and unfortunately he can't sleep anymore. So that's a bummer. That's an expensive investment to basically keep yourself awake during an emergency. And then the big one is the last one there, the fuel. Sunshine is free. It's there all the time pretty much. We get to use it and not have to pay for it. But if you have a gas generator, you're paying for that gas. And if you have a line running to your house, yeah, it's fine. You can get it, but you start paying for it. And some people have to have gas trucked in, and during an emergency, that can be a big issue as well. So lots of big advantages to the solar plus battery over a gas generator. Next for solar is what's called building integrated photovoltaics. I know that's a lot of letters, but it really just means building materials that create electricity is what we're looking for. And the most common one, or most popular one right now is Tesla, the same company that makes the Powerwall and the electric vehicle. They make a cool product called a solar roof. And it's hopefully going to be rolling out in North Carolina here in the next about year or so. But the idea is to do the same function as a solar panel, but to make it just look like a typical roof. So you don't have the actual solar panels that look different from your roof. The whole roof would basically be small solar panels. And then I wanted to share some things at the end here just for some few further research if you'd like. North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association is our industry advocacy group. They have a lot of really cool resources on their website and a lot of just a great way to learn more about our industry, specifically in North Carolina. NC Clean Energy Tech Center, formerly the North Carolina Solar Center, is another good one right there at NC State. And then a couple cool videos for you here just to give you a little bit more background on how solar works in North Carolina and allow you to get more info from our website if you like. Over on the left, I also wanted to point out at Marbles Museum in Raleigh. Anyone who's ever gone there, we have this thing called the Power Flower. It's pretty cool. It's a giant sunflower. It's got 2 solar panels there on the leaves. And as you rotate the flower, if you point those panels directly at the sun, it makes the top of that flower spin around really, really fast. And as you point it away from the sun, it'll slow down. So you can really see how much more power you can generate when the panel is pointed perpendicular to the sun versus a really funky sideways angle. And I believe that's my last one on the solar slides. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Well, you guys, we really look forward to some questions from you on energy efficiency, and solar power. And thanks for taking the time to watch our little presentation on our company and how we are approaching changing the way people make and use energy. We look forward to getting to hopefully talk to you guys soon. Thank you.